Hello, hello, hello. Today I'm talking with Ines Garcia. We talked about the Agile Sustainability Manifesto, about urgency and agency, and the coalition of the willing. I'm Yves Hanul from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of Agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it. Hello everyone, and with me I have Ines. Is that how I should pronounce your name?
Yeah, that's it. Well done. Ines rhymes with Guinness.
Rice with Gimmons. Okay, so we're talking beer already. Uh, let's. What I want to show is also a little bit on where we are. Is so I'm at this moment. I'm in Belgium, and so Google shows me the little blue dot is where my house is. After built after this picture, and then moved to. I think you're in London, yes, if I'm correct.
Well, right now I'm in Devon.
So right now,
It's
not exactly. Um, okay, that's also a possibility. I didn't know that, and of course, I didn't want to put the exact location. That's also not the goal to give stalkers an option. And for me, it's at this moment it's 28 minutes after 5 in the evening on a Friday evening. What's the time on your side?
I'm an hour ahead, so that's 4:28 in the UK in Devon.
Yeah, so we see, well, not that far away, but still already time zones, it's already a difference. In Europe, well, okay, we can discuss if you're still in Europe or not. That's a
Europe
whole
is a
different kind.
continent. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But for the few people that don't know you, could before we jump into the questions, could you say a little bit who are you and what do you want people to know about you?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm Ines Garcia. I was born in Barcelona and I've been living in the UK for the last 17 years, so all my agile life. And yeah, in the context of today, maybe that I say I'm also a Scrum Master certified advanced professional, and I've been in the ecosystem for over a decade and a half. I'm freelance, I work for myself.
You work
Um,
for yourself.
yeah, I like to
Okay.
explain that I'm an agile and climate coach because I will get to this subject, I would imagine, but that's sort of the focus of my work.
Okay, that's already looking forward to that. And I know a couple of people who like to combine it. In a way, Agile, we want to improve the world in many different ways. So we'll indeed probably go into that. So, as a first question, what is something that people usually don't know about you, but has influenced you in who you are?
This is a difficult question, but because life is a journey and sort of makes us who we are, and there are many different variables that makes us unique. But one thing I suppose that I'm happy to share is that I am married with Helen Garcia, a wonderful agile professional. She's also a behavioral
Mhm.
coach, like a coach. She has a diploma, and we have been married for about 5.5 years at the time of this recording, and together for 14. And she's incredible human being. It's so supporting, it's so uplifting, and has a great eye for detail, and is super crafty. Like I say all the time, she can do anything. Like makes our bread, is on an Ironman, is a certified electrician just because she was interested in the subject. Got her
Wow.
coaching diploma. Like she can draw, she can take pictures, she can fix things. I mean, you name it. It's pretty incredible. And people sometimes ask me how do I get involved in so many things, and there are many things that contributes to that, but none of it, I don't think it will be possible without the endless support and patience and love from my wife Helen.
That's yeah, that's wonderful to share. Could you give one example that you want to share about how that influenced you in your life? That support that you have, or is that too personal?
No, I'll just have to think about. I mean, for example, one of the things that probably influenced me as well a little bit for how I see the world is I'm very interested in permaculture, agroforestry. So part of our food. Is something that we grow, and she's been very helpful to make things, and I'll come up with ideas, and I'm a starter. I'll start many things, so it's fantastic to have somebody that you can rely on, that you can discuss things, and you can like sort of evolve a little bit the design of things together, knowing that we have different perspective, but at the end of the day we have the same goal. So it's great to be able to have someone that you can tap into.
That what I'm hearing is but it looks like the ideas might come from you or might come from Helen, and in that way you interact with each other, and she's supporting you in some of these choices. Maybe not all of them, but in I hear in most of them. That's what I'm hearing. Is that a correct
Yeah, exactly. How
statement?
can we enrich each other's ideas? And that's really nice when you find a team that you can do that sort of things. But what a great privilege to have that also at home.
Yeah, and I would say in that way, our family or is our first team. I mean, like
Mhm.
you're that is your first team as a couple to okay do stuff together, in a way. So I really like that you bring that on. I think this is true for many people, but we sometimes forget how big that influence
Mm.
has on us, both on positive and negative. Of course, if things are not going well, then we will feel it in a negative way, because we always have some days that are better than others. But it's nice to bring that as a huge influence on you. So thanks for sharing that. Let's move to that second question. If you had not been doing what you've been doing now, do you have any idea what would have become of
Difficult to predict. I actually come from a communication background. I have a double degree in the PR, advertising, marketing, extracurriculum in protocol and matters of the state. So who knows?
you?
Maybe
That's
as
already many different influences, I would
it's
say.
all communication, right? So maybe I will have end up in brand management, maybe. Business transformation really is how got me into agile and successful. So maybe brands, yeah. But again, as I was saying, I got into permaculture. So maybe I will have open a small holding there, happy with my plants and my trees. Who knows?
Hmm. And is that something when you say so? This question typically is aiming at the past, but the way you phrase it, it sounds also that it might be your future. Is that a correct understanding of how what you just said?
Well, why not? Staying still is going
Hmm.
backwards. So
Exactly, but that's why I like it. That you're not the first one, but it I always love it when people think about that question and realize like, well, it's not because it's not the case right now that it I might not be moving in that direction. So and what is inspiring you to do that, or what makes you think like, okay, this might be an option for me?
life is full of flavors, and I think work should do too. I'm a generalist, some of the things I already talked about, and I'm quite involved with the local community as well in terms of not just being active part of my civic life, but living the place better than how they found it. And that's also my local space, how we can introduce biodiversity and how can we make connections and communities and stuff. So um, I enjoy doing many things, as I enjoy plates full of flavor with many things. And
Mm,
I think work is part of that. Um, I struggle with sort of finding a role and being put in a box, and then you master that box, and then don't worry, there is another box for you. I see the
mm.
world as much more sort of interconnected and flexible and flavorsome. So
And many boxes. That's what I'm hearing.
yeah, well, not that I sit in any of them, but if it works for
Boxes for
some
you to
people,
play with them.
yeah, exactly. That's it.
Well, or you haven't discovered the box which you're in. That is also a possibility that there is a bigger box that you don't know yet.
But yeah, the biosphere. All right, that's my biggest box.
That I like that. And even then, there might be a bigger box that we don't know. So that's thanks for sharing it. But it's interesting to think about that in different kind of ways. I think many people yeah we don't want to be put into boxes. So I really like that extra remark that you say in. And at the same time, there might be boxes that we don't know about, but once we discover them, we realize, oh, wait a minute, is that a box I want to be in? And maybe not. And like you say, maybe that box of agile coach is too limited, and I want to do something on top of that and something next. And like you say, being active in your community and helping out in changing the world in many different ways. So.
Mm. I mean, I guess maybe it's as well because I work for myself. I'm freelance, so I will have multiple different size types, industries, flavors of different clients.
Mm.
And it's interesting because everybody's very unique and they have their very specific context and everything. But the problems and the patterns, have a lot of similarities. And it's quite interesting also being able to sort of zoom in something, zoom out, go elsewhere, and then find that this thing over here actually has a lot to do with that thing over there. And you can be quite creative and innovate by, being enriched beyond just one job, one role, one industry, one company. I find it quite inspiring and it energizes me. It gives me, my toes, gives me new ideas. So maybe it comes from that. I'm not sure.
I really like that way of, because indeed every customer they're unique, but if you zoom out, you see a lot of some. I've recognized that with lots of my customers as well. Is that okay? You're unique in a way that is true, but if we zoom out, I see similar kind of problems. The details are different, but if we zoom out, some of the problems are the same. And so what might work in one company with a little bit tweaking and with some inspiration and other things, it might still work. And sometimes the opposite is also true. You think it's exactly the same, but somehow it's not. So,
Yes.
but that is for me also a reason why I like to be independent. Like, okay, zooming in into certain clients and zooming into problems, and then zooming out again and seeing similarities and differences. And so, yeah. I really like that. And what I'm hearing with you is that it also allows you to, well, focus sometimes a little bit, not just on one industry, on multiple things, and maybe even, oh, maybe some more time for communities and some other kind of things. Um, how are your customers reacting to that? Do they see that same value, or do they sometimes like, yeah, but you don't have experience in our industry, or is that what kind of reactions do you get?
Thankfully, I haven't been confronted with such a reaction. One of my customers, I don't, yeah, one of my customers, I don't know how much I like the term, but I like the meaning, introduced me in calls as Swiss Army knife
Mm,
because, I may be more T-shaped in certain areas, but I'm a generalist. I like it. And actually, sometimes I do a lot of work around the Salesforce ecosystem. And sometimes I'll go into a project because, I don't know, let's say the marketing cloud application is behaving in ways that no one knows. So I go there, I unravel the spaghetti design. But after that, my aim is sort of train up the team so they can do that sort of stuff. We can look at other things. How is the whole application being looked after? Then I start looking at the human systems behavioral thing that maybe marketing should be speaking with ops and stuff like that, and how can we leverage beyond just certain one thing. So it's quite good. At least it keeps me well entertained, and I think it's very valuable for customers as well that I can work through multiple different layers.
yeah, I agree. But yeah, I asked because indeed, well, luckily you haven't encountered that, but I've seen sometimes customers, or at least people that you need to convince a little bit, because yeah, our references, our industries might be different, but we bring so much ideas from different kind of things. And actually, well, the customers that need that most are the ones that don't always realize that, because they think, yeah, we are so good in our environment, but yeah, but that's exactly why we need independent people to jump in that bring an outside view for some of that. So yeah, and I think then people like you are bringing much value there. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if they wanted to perpetuate the same thing, wouldn't really be looking for somebody else to jump in and help, right? So
Exactly, and that's exactly why they need us, and so they always, but they don't always realize that. So yeah, but that's part of our challenge, I would say.
mm.
Well, talking about challenge, what do you consider your biggest challenge, and at least the biggest challenge that you want to put out on the internet?
I think at this point of time, and for a little bit of what we've been speaking about is frustration and lack of action around sustainability.
Mm.
Sustainability is a word that is really highly used, but maybe we could talk about regeneration. And I try to remind myself that frustration is good. So that's good because it's essentially energy. And so
Mm.
let's canalize that energy into something of value. And with my climate coaching work, what has become more apparent to me is that people get it. We have to change the status quo. There is urgency, right? There is theoretical agreement. We must do something. But then
Mhm.
where we lose the most people is crossing that chasm between the theory, the practice, into the practice, into the from urgency, to agency. And we don't
Mm.
have time to waste. So I do really try to remind myself that frustration is energy, and we need to do that conversion into action. And in a sense, that's where the Agile Sustainability Manifesto came about as a reaction of frustration into something that is hopefully of value. Um, and with the agile community, I think we are key players as change enablers, actually, to start exploring how we do our work in a way that matters.
Mhm. Yeah, so yeah, I really like. I will put also the Agile Manifesto, the Agile Sustainable Manifesto. Sorry, I'm too much used to saying the other one.
Yeah.
Also into the show notes. But yeah, having the people and our planet above profit is something that is so important. Yeah, I still see companies agreeing and at the same time have a hard time doing it because of course they also want to survive as a company, which is important, but it doesn't mean that you need to have unlimited profit, for example, and yeah, so much more. I don't know the exact manifesto out of my head, but I think there is also value over consumption, so I really like that part as well. Yeah, the
Yeah.
fact that we're bringing value much more than just consuming, because we're running to a very, or we're living in a very consuming world. But does it always bring value? Like, okay, is buying just the only thing that makes us happy, or that we want to do? What's really the value there?
Yeah,
So
how can you decouple how you operate or your products or into profit, right? And we have many myths, I think, in the subject. And one is that you need to sacrifice profit, and is false. We need to debunk the myth, right? Because even looking at renewables are cheaper. We waste 90% of the material. So one thing is energy, another one is our physical world, right? If you keep this within your value chain, you have a greater margin. Also, 1% of the GDP globally literally burns due to fires, due to climate. 1%
mhm,
loss of 1% increase of severe rainfall equals 2% of GDP loss. I mean, that is where the growth is going. So we really need to be able to confront some of these myths and narrative into actually facts, right? I'm sorry, I get very passionate about the subject. And that's
yeah,
kind of what I try
that
to do with this frustration, convert it into action and something of value. Because, for example, nature is super clever at the uses of energy, it's very efficient. So let's not go into waste or despair and trying to put and funnel these maybe frustrations or difficulties into something that hopefully helps others.
yeah, and just for clarity, you created that manifesto, I think, together with Jutta and with Marisa, if
Yeah, so
I'm
we
correct.
co-chairs from the Agile Alliance Sustainability Initiative. There are three sort of different areas that we concentrate. There is also little bite-sized pieces of content for people to, because it's such a big subject, right? So we're
Mhm.
trying to level up the playing field and help people make that connection of Agile with many things around sustainability. And Manifesto is one of the things that Surface we launched at the end of last year.
Yeah, and I really liked it, and I think this is, yeah, it's one of these nice things. And I think Well, the second part of the question, why is it a good thing for you? You already explained it very well with the fact that it gives you energy because you see the frustration it turns into energy. That's, I think, what boils that down. Is there anything else you want to add to that? Why is that challenge a good thing for you next to the energy?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you another adventure,
Mm-hmm.
which, thanks to this, I've been running a program with other three agilists um, since last year, and we all freelancers. And to do this, we sort of created what we call the coalition of the willing.
Mm-hmm.
And what we have is a 4 weeks program where we address how to enable change agents today, right? Agilist, and we call it agile sustainability in practice. So that's we're covering circular economy, sustainable development goals, complexity, science, right? So people live with knowledge, but not only that, it's 4 weeks hands-on. So you also live with practice in your context, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we did as well, because we can be talking about sustainable development goals and how maybe we evolve our agile tools in a way that incorporates some of these things without applying into our own coalition. So one of the things that we did is that we have this pay it forward scheme. So for every registration, you're basically supporting someone that doesn't have the means, because leveling up the playing field, SDG4,
Mm-hmm.
matters. But yeah, I don't want to take too much time with these sort of things.
But that we'll add definitely the some of these links to the show notes, and people can find, I think, a lot more under the website from the Agile Alliance because that's part of the program. I think the last thing maybe not,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'll definitely add some links there. People are
Yeah,
interested.
and this year is gonna be hard. This, I think, is proven. We're talking in May already, and it's proven quite
Mm.
hard as well for our arena of agilists. And I think when people reached out of concern, try to think of it as an opportunity. How are you gonna make the most of a year that may be a bit flaky? What do you want the world to go, and how you want to be part of it? Now is the time.
Mm. That's yeah, because it's already too late, but at the same time, yeah, the next best date is today in a way. So yeah, that's I really like that. Um, and you, this is well, the way this conversation is going, you dive into these subjects immediately with so many content. We talk much more about some other stuff, but you keep diving into that. So for me, that's a nice example of a lot of drive, a lot of passion. Do you know where that drive and that passion is coming from?
Um, Food. I mean, you do get to my heart through my tummy as well, but also opportunities. I think I say I'm a starter. I get into all sorts of things, and that thrive of newness and possibilities, that also includes my work with coaches, with teams, with organizations. For me, it's like a canvas of options, of flavors to taste, I suppose. And I mean, the other thing as well, that as independent creators, I have some courses, published few books and stuff like that. The support of people that makes my work possible, like being and seeing those people that got certified, got the success
Hmm.
stories, that you hear about their career progressions, how that inspiration move into action. And for me, it makes it all worth it. So for those, thank you for teaming up with me, because it really energized me, and then it gets me into more adventures. So it's like a crazy circle.
Yeah, I really like that. And you're not the first that says that, well, we do something out of a frustration, out of something, and all of a sudden people, yeah, bring you energy because you help them, but actually for me, this is the same. I have the same feeling here, like I said also in the pre-talk for, yes, this takes time, but at the same time, it gives me so much energy when I hear people like you talking so passionate about the things you care about. And that just gives and creates energy. And so I can definitely see that when people do that. And if we look back at, if you want to share, how did this all started? How did you? Because that's now you're into a wheel, I would say, that keeps giving. But how did that originally start? Was there something that kickstarted that original drive in you? Like, for example, the drive for the climate. Is that something that you already had as a young person? How was that?
Uh, no, I think I would say that for me, it has become more apparent over the last 10 years that our how we interact and treat each other or our business as usual is the most unusual, because we're not only leaving each other in a worse state and our products at times in a worse state, but also we're driving species into extinction. We converted 75% of land.
Mm.
We were talking about the extraction of items we already, consuming about to planet Earth. I mean, how sustainable is that? And so, working with multiple clients, and for me, the state of the world, I know we can do better. I know, and I researched those companies for the book Sustainable Happy Profit. There are patterns, there are strategies and clear mechanisms that we can put in place. Our life is perishable, right? We have certain capacity at day. You finish your day feeling inspired that you made a difference. So it's just over time, it's just become clearer and clearer that there is a better way to do business, and it really is up to us. You don't have to ask permission.
Exactly, and then what I'm hearing is you don't want to spend working in the old way because you've seen the light or whatever we call it, and then you keep doing it, and that's yeah, and I really like that because it's also in a way I would say, like, for example, we're talking this on Friday. I don't think I've ever had, like, in the last 20 years, a feeling like thanks God it's Friday. It's like, no, I'm like to work in the way I work, and I never dread in going back on Monday. I don't say that every day is a fantastic day. There are
Mm.
better days and there are worse days. Um, but still helping improving the world and helping others people improving and things like that, it can give a lot of energy, and then it's, yeah, almost impossible to go back to the old way, I would say.
Mm.
Or definitely I would not have energy for that. And at the same time, part of our job, and this is why I'm asking a little bit, part of your job is helping people to get there, and they're not there yet because these clients are contacting you because they can't do it without you, or they need at least someone. So how is that then for you, coming to a new client and then see, okay, they still are only there? How does that has an impact on you?
Well, start small and learn fast,
Mm.
right? Because we are all in different spaces. So I think as an external services provider, it's very easy to come in and be quite gung ho, do this, do that, this is wrong, blah blah blah. But there is human system behavioral that is already in place, and it has many functions and fill gaps that we won't know about. So it's very important to take the time and care to appreciate what works before you go gung ho and start poking the system like there is no tomorrow. So although things may not sound as, it's greener in the other side or whatever, it's important to actually help yourself and be slightly more sort of humble and appreciate that there is goodness there, and just the fact that they got out there and got some help means a lot. So yeah, I think sometimes we just need to quiet our pretend cleverness and experience as well.
That is true. Sometimes we, yeah, because it's people might feel offended if you bring too quickly too much cleverness in a way, and then, yeah, because the goal is not to be smart. The goal is to help people to go to the next step, and bringing all the solutions. They would not listen to you in a minute, I would say. So yeah, sometimes it's okay, what's the next step, and listening to people. So
Yeah.
yeah, I really
And how
like.
can we, lift others as we rise?
Exactly. Yeah, and lift each other, not just yeah, exactly. Okay, I want to go to that next question. With everything that you talked about already, what do you consider your biggest achievement so far, of course, because I assume that there's still a lot of things to achieve.
I have hopefully much life left as well on me. Yeah, the biggest, maybe, quite a few things in my life that I'm quite proud in my professional career. Maybe relocate. I didn't think much of it then, but that takes courage. And publishing the Becoming More Agile book in English, which is not my first language. So, and it's also an incredible feeling holding your own book, I must admit. Maybe also being awarded multiple years the Salesforce MVP award. There's like 200 of us in the world. And recently I was invited into the Hall of Fame cohort. I mean, I think 20 years I wouldn't have thought that these sort of things will happen. So, and obviously my current sustainability ventures, because more and more of my work is sort of focused on that, and it feels important, is a job with purpose.
I really like that. And yeah, I also noticed that very easy. It looks very easy for you to give a few examples of things that you're really proud of as big achievements. And so it brings also for me back that question that I sometimes ask before I ask this question, is it easy for you, Ines, to be proud and to actually take the stage? Because in a way, asking what is your big achievement is kind of giving people the moment to brag. Is that easy for you as a person to stand there and say, hey, look at it, this is what I done?
No, and it's not easy to put yourself out there, especially a lot of the content is sort of are wild ideas that you put them into the world and you just don't know how that's gonna go. So it takes courage. It's not easy, and it's what helps for me sometimes is this decouple that why am I doing it and why is of value, and just trying to take myself out of the picture.
And what effect has that on you if you take yourself out of that picture?
Because it's not about me.
And still, I think you can still be proud of it, even if it's not about you, right?
Yeah, of course, as contributors. And, you look, I like to think that, in my deathbed, I look back on time and I say, I did try. I did my best. I'll die trying, if anything. And so, yeah, in hindsight, at least is how I like to live my life. Leaving the place better than how we found it.
But at the same time, what I've noticed is that, and I recognize a lot of that when talking about achievements, books, and everything else. It's like, yeah, do I really want to always keep mentioning that? And at the same time, I notice how much easier it is for me to mention achievements from other people. Like, okay, I can look at other people and say, hey, this is really cool what you did. And then I realized that it's actually much easier to talk about these kind of achievements than my own. And that is sometimes a kind of strange feeling. Do you recognize that, or is that completely different for you?
No, I mean, of course, but if you put time, care, effort to create something of value, then no one's gonna know unless you shout about it.
I really like that. Indeed, unless you start sharing it, nobody else will know, and of course, then that initiative will also don't get the attention that it deserves. Of course.
Why are you finding it difficult?
Well, I didn't really think I was difficult until I noticed that, for example, my daughter at some years ago, at 12, she published a little book about a workshop that she did with computers, Arduino, and I noticed almost immediately that at every occasion that we talked about Arduino, or they were talking about computers or STEM or whatever, I was, without any thinking, I was just dropping that, hey, by the way, this might be interesting. I would never do that about my own books or about my own stuff. And I didn't think that I kept myself from not doing it, but I just found it so interesting to see that difference. If it's about someone else, and of course, as a father, we even made even more proud. But I also noticed that once I realized that, I noticed that, for example, what we just discussed, the Agile Sustainable Manifesto. Yeah, I know that this is that Yuta. I talked with her about it. I know Marisa, so we talked already about it. So I'm like immediately thinking like, hey, this is what these 3 women did. So I'm like sharing that almost immediately. And if I would have created something similar, I would probably not have mentioned some of that. So this is where I find interesting to ask people, is that similar? And I'm hearing like with you, like it's not about me. And I fully understand that. And at the same time, I'm hearing you say, and I love that so much that you say, oh, but if I don't talk about it, maybe nobody else will talk about it. So I need to talk about it so that that manifesto or other things that I think is important are keeps people seeing. And I think that's also an important part, I think, realizing, hey, if I care about that cause, I should be someone, or at least someone should be fighting for that cause. And that sometimes means being on the front rows and keep saying, like, hello, there is something to care about, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we live in such a noisy world, right? So at
Mm,
least select the messages that you care about for other people to know, and stop putting noise out there. Maybe you can be slightly more
exactly.
selective with your words.
Exactly. But yeah, again, this is about the value over other things. So I really like that. Okay, I want to move to that next question. What is a personal agility tip that you would like to share?
Always be learning. I mentioned earlier the staying still is going backwards, and I
Mhm.
mean we are in flux, and we talk about tune and adjusting in the agile space quite a bit. So how you are attuned to your local conditions, I think matter is going to be becoming more and more important skill, the ability to adapt, and that's about adapting in place and space and knowledge and community. I think our agile craft, if we can call it that, is at the tipping point. I mean, it's been more than 20 years. It really is time for us to elevate it into a new heights.
Mm. And when you talk about always learning, could you give some examples of how you keep pushing yourself to learn, or how you, because I can imagine that for some people, yes, we want to learn, and then there is something that's happening and we don't have energy for learning, or there might be others. How do you deal with that? How do you, yeah.
Yeah, I think a myriad of different things. So one is having, so I have more or less a target in terms of certifications I want to get a year. Again, as I
Mhm.
said, I also dive into a little bit of developing and stuff like that. So I know I need to keep up with the times. So I need to make the space. So I have a target of amount of certs I get every year. I also try to read and make space, make it into a habit. If you make it into your everyday rhythm, right? Like the rhythm of sprints, you can make it happen. And I, especially in terms of sustainability over years, I put myself through different learning path. I'm a Cambridge circular economy professional from an executive program with them. I have to put the time and effort to make that happen. I'm a
Mhm.
biomimicry practitioner. That's 6 months of super intense program. And so you just have to make space. You have certain capacity a year. How are you going to distribute your learning so you still on demand, you're still up to date, and you're still relevant? Plus you're focusing where you want to go.
Mhm. But I really like, because you, especially when you, with your example of something that takes a lot of space for learning,
Mhm.
um, I also think it's important to realize that, or at least that's how it feels to me, that when we're learning in one aspect of our life, maybe we need to be, I don't know, giving ourselves more grace if at other parts we are not able to learn. I mean, I've seen it. For example, I have three children. At the moment I became a parent, and that there were sleepless nights and whatever, that might not be the real moment to. When my daughter was born, I just literally on that day that she was born, I started a 2-year program. Looking back on that, like that was not, it was a training on becoming a therapist. Not that I wanted to do that, but I wanted to learn what therapists learn. If I look back now, I realized this was the worst moment of my, yeah, of my life to do that. Well, maybe not the worst, but one of the not so good moments, because I literally had no headspace for doing a lot of that. And I was in that progress of always wanting to learn, but I realized, like, for us, if I look at our little family, going from two children to three was like, whoa, okay, this is a big change. It was a lot harder for us than from 0 to 1 or from 1 to 2 for whatever reason that was. And so I've seen it also. And so I don't know, is that something you also recognize that once you're adapting in a way, because in this way, becoming a parent for 2 to 3 is also kind of learning, that there are moments that you try to do some other kind of learning where you say, realize later, like, well, maybe there is already too much in my life.
Hmm. Interesting. I think that, yeah, with your third kid, maybe it was the lines of communication that suddenly one more, it just created too many.
I can go on. We can definitely have a beer or have a sitting in the bar
Yeah.
discussing, because I have after 20 years a lot of ideas on that. But
Yeah.
for me, it's more the example of like there are things in your life that take so much headspace that
Yeah.
actually there is not much room for learning in another place. Is that something you
I
recognize?
think it's this idea of capacity, right? So you only have certain time and headspace a day. And again, we live in such a noisy world. So you can also reduce the volume in certain things to give you headspace. Um, but yeah, I mean, you're gonna need to make decisions of where you're gonna put your time and effort. And I do many things at once, and I struggle to say no to things, but sometimes it becomes apparent that I need to have work in progress limits, and so I'm gonna finish
Mm.
this first, and then I can do da, because doing half an hour of each 30 things a day ain't gonna happen.
So, in a way, what I'm hearing is that also for learning, there is a whip limit. Like, okay, learning in progress, we need to limit that learning as well in some places, maybe
Yeah,
not for everything.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
so I really like that. That's yeah. uh, I didn't think about that in a way, but thanks for sharing that, because that's, I think it's really good, because thinking about that, because I do love lifelong learning, and I
Mm.
think we need to adapt and keep learning. Like you said, if you're not learning, you're standing behind, and you're actually uh, digressing in many ways. But that doesn't mean that all the learning is always, yeah, in the predictable way. Sometimes we learn at moments that we don't realize it, and sometimes there is already too much learning going on in another part. So that's an interesting part. So thanks for
Yeah.
sharing that. I want to move to that next question about remote and learning again about remote working. And so you already talked that you've moved from Spain to UK. Um, did you do a lot of remote working before COVID hit? Or were you? Yeah, how was that for you?
Yeah, so if I may, just a small clarification. I'm from Barcelona. I am Catalan
Ah, sorry. Yeah,
in
of
my
course.
heart. Thank you. And you're
I'm that.
Belgian, so you must understand.
I fully understand, and I'm actually working. We just started a team in Barcelona, and we
Oh,
had
brilliant.
I have a discussion with people from Catalan, so I should know indeed to know that difference. So thanks for calling me out on that
No,
one.
no, absolutely. I
Um,
mean, above all, I'm a citizen of the universe, right? And so we all.
mhm. But that's even. I really like that you mentioned and you point that out. So yeah, sorry.
So remote, sorry for the diversion, but so I worked with remote teams for years, like before pandemic. At the end of the day, working with distributed teams allows you to tap into the global pool of talent. And I think that's why in 2020 we started a virtual agile meetup, and that keeps going. Like we have next month Joanna Rothman, so we do that once a month, and mm, becoming more agile. It can be 1D. You remember back on the days we had meetings on the phone. It can be
Mm,
1D, it can be 3D, and can be 2D. We don't get now.
mm,
Um, so I was kind of reminded recently that sort of lift and shift doesn't work, and that doesn't work also when you facilitate the space for people. So you can't just expect a 3D into the exact copy paste gonna work. So context matter. So how
exactly.
can you take the opportunity maybe to look at the setting, at the tools, at who's there, to focus on impact, to look at the purpose of why you're coming together in the first place. And if that's not clear, don't do it. We had a very nice session in at the end of 2020 in the virtual agile with Paul Goddard.
Hmm.
I can give you the link for the notes. He kind of show us few tricks on how to use the camera for intention. Right? Really, intention drives attention. So it's trying to take the most of the setting that you have, make the most out of it, so that the interaction is actually of purpose, is useful, is effective. But yeah, so that's a little bit my remoteness from pre 2020.
I also like both the part that the intentional part of it, but I also hear in a way that you mentioned, and I'm going to translate it a little bit, and it might be a little bit explaining or taking too much in it, but in a way, I also heard you say that the tools also matter, or
Hmm.
knowing your tools matter. Is that a correct statement, or is that something you would have made yourself? That tools matter in that way of knowing your tools matter?
So for me, it's about understanding the context and what you have on the space, right? Like if a particular setting on 3D in the office only had cubicles, your meeting's going to be different. You'll find a different space, perhaps. If
Mm,
your remote setup is with a particular tool, what are the different things you can use to focus and drive attention, or to focus, to spotlight, to there, so being aware and taking the time, I suppose, to facilitate within the context what is given to you, including the tools, it can definitely bring the interactions to a whole new level, rather just trying to do the same. That is just, it's not the same. Like if you're trying to, I don't know, talk about a PowerPoint when you're having a conference meeting on the phone. It's not going to work the same way. So what would you do? Maybe use the tools and the things before, explain things in a visual narrative. So it's just being a bit more conscious that you can expect the same thing when you have different reality.
mm. Yes, yeah, I can see that, and in a way, what you said is very similar to people over processes and tools in the way that, okay, we want people to do it, and I so loved the example of the cubicles, because when we talk about remote, people sometimes say, yeah, but if that tool doesn't work, we may want to change, or a better tool might help in a way. And then people think tools matter, but actually what we're saying is, no, we want to adapt the tools for what we need and the context, like you said earlier on. But we had the same thing with the cubicles before. We just didn't realize it, or we don't realize it anymore. That okay, there were tools that didn't work out. The cubicles, like, oh, that's not really helping for teamwork. Let's make open spaces, and we adapted our context to make it more work. And what I hear you describing is, and now we do something similar with the online cubicles or the online tools that we're having. And I really like that. Yeah, that changing that metaphor, or at least showing the similarities between the online and the offline world. So that's I really like that point of view, I would say.
Cool. Well, I look forward to hear about which experiments you're going to do now with this new thinking.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of experiments on remote working, and I do like that. Yeah, indeed, looking at that kind of things, because I sometimes feel that people we notice. Well, I noticed in Corona, for example, that tools made a huge difference for working remote. Like I've worked with back in 2005 with Skype. If you compare it to all the tools that we have now, tools have improved so much more and do help. But indeed, it's not so much about the tools, but how do we implement and how do we look at these kind of things, and what experiments are we're trying? Because even then, in 2005, we were able, I don't know, to just put the camera on a team and then air it out all the time. And that way it worked as well. So yeah, I really like that we need to be much more experimental with our tools and what we have. So
Mhm.
thanks for bringing that. I want to move to that next question. What is a book you have read that you want to talk about?
Okay, so the last book I read is Rebugging the World, and now I'm reading Who Owns England. So again, being a generalist also in my books consumption,
Hmm.
but for I guess the audience of today, I think one book that will be quite helpful and widening views is Biomimicry, which is from Janine Benioff.
I think that's the book, right?
That's it. Yeah, innovation inspired by nature. That's it. And it kind of covers a lot of questions that matters, like how will we feed ourselves? Like our current food system, it doesn't work for everyone. And it certainly doesn't work for the environment. It's a broken, complex, adaptive system. And I think as agilists, we have a lot to do that we can certainly help, because we not only produce food in a way that doesn't work for the environment and in terms of pollution, but also we waste like 2/3 of it, whilst 10% of the population goes hungry. Our lake is broken. And I think if we take our craft up a notch and start answering some of these questions, like I would imagine lots of people are working in technology. So she covers how would we harness energy? How would we store what we learn? We already have a great electricity grid capacity that is quite concerning. And AI and quantum computing is really pushing and driving the spike on consumption. And the forecast that we have, our grids can't handle. So what are we going to do? Right. So there are a lot of different sections of the book that I think is just very interesting, and it sort of makes you consider what you do, how you do, and asking big questions, very tangible questions about what we eat, our healthcare, the way that we drive business, how we heal ourselves, the healthcare system. So highly recommended.
Thanks for bringing that up. And I want to go back a little bit to the other book. You quickly mentioned Who Owns England. So I as well. So what, from what I understand, you're in the middle of reading, or you just finished it? I'm not sure.
So that one I'm reading at the moment.
Yeah.
So the one that I just finished, it was rebagging the system, so the world, so bringing bugs, insects, and invertebrates into our life and care.
So, but the one about England, what triggered you to read it, and why should we read it?
Well, quite random. So in the village, there is a space of an open library, so you can put books there for people to pick. When you finish a book, they're basically sitting and doing nothing over there. That sometimes you look back, but you can also share it with others. So giving it a second life or many more lives. So yeah, we went to, when I say we, because we read to each other sometimes, and we ran out of books and say, okay, right, let's go and check out the library locally. And that was there, and I thought it was interesting. So we're reading that at the moment, and it's about understanding who owns the land, and one could challenge the meaning of owning, really. But interesting how things have moved over time, how we have certain groups of people have stolen land from each other, moving away from land that produce food, habitat, cleans the air, leaves the water in a better state, to spaces that are diminished, that we extract minerals and metals from. And Who Owns England actually is not English people, which I found it quite interesting. Where our tax money is going, and how many of the subsidiaries, which is taxpayers' money, is actually going into states that don't produce food, so or are owned by the crown, or so it's just suddenly like this layer that I never thought about it. I clearly been playing the wrong game when you were talking about boxes. I mean, this one really did not expect it at the size that the book is sort of making clear.
And that this is what I've heard about. I have totally not read the book, but I've heard about the book before. So this is why I was asking, because I thought, okay, this is the kind of book that again makes you think. We all think that we know the system and we know the countries and whatever, and then all of a sudden you read books like that explain like, well, it's actually way more complex than you thought it is. And so that, thanks for bringing that up, because I think this is the kind of thing that people learn and that we learn about. Okay, what else can we do for if we want to make the world better, we need first to understand the system that we're trying to change. And like you say, maybe we're trying to adapt the wrong system. If that's what I always see. The better we understand the system, the better we can tweak it to actually make it move in a certain direction. Otherwise, we're just playing, improving a local thing, but we're actually not making any progress on the larger scale. So that is an important part
Yeah,
to
I
see
don't know
there.
if you've seen the visual called carbon tunnel vision.
No, I don't.
I think again, as agile practitioner, system thinking and stuff like that. When we have a challenge, we tend to we have this inertia of looking at it in a very narrow way when there is more
Hmm.
things into the picture, and so this visual for me, I, explains very well what's happening. We talk a lot about carbon emissions or carbon equivalents, right? We have to reduce our emissions by half in the next 6 years by 2030. So that's a
Hmm.
fact. But there are many other things that we should account for in terms of who are we leaving behind, right? The certain materials, how are those collected for our renewables, or what's happening with our biodiversity and our fresh water supply and availability. Well, we need to talk about consumption and production, right? We won't get there if we don't tackle those sort of questions. So it's a quite nice visual that it shows you how narrow you could look at the things if
Mm.
you don't take the time and care to actually understand the system a bit more.
So is that, like, just looked it up? Is that this picture that you mean?
Yeah, I don't think that's the original, but it's very, very similar. That's it, carbon tunnel vision, where we sort
Okay.
of narrowing focus into carbon
To
emissions, and
one
there are
part,
many other
but
things. Yeah.
there are many other things, that kind of thing. So cool thing to actually, yeah. Okay, I'm already happy that I found a picture. It's kind of harder to know than the exact original one, but at least we show it. But if you can point me to the exact one where we can put it online, I might be able to give an exact link to the one that you mentioned, or you want to say. But we'll do that afterwards. Okay, I want to go to that next question. What question do you think I should also ask you, and what's the answer?
All right. So maybe you should ask me what's next.
So what
And
is next?
let me think. Let me check my diary. The sort of next thing. So we took in early May. Mid towards end of the month, I'm going to be at the Lean Agile London. I've
Hmm.
been asked to keynote about this connection intersection of agile and sustainability, and it sort of fills me with hope. The fact that at least in my bias vision world, I'm seeing momentum in the industry. There is interest. People wants to understand how these things go together and what can we do. And then after that, I'm going to Berlin by train, and I'm going to support the Salesforce conference there. It's the first one run by the community, so I wanted to help out a little bit. And then I'm slow traveling back with train. I'm going to stop in a couple places on the way back. And once I'm back, then we start the next cohort for the coalition, so the Agile Sustainability Program. So really looking forward to what's going to happen within this month. So lots of things.
Oh, and that's, yeah. I find it interesting because you zoom into that agenda of this month of some of the things that you're doing, and at the same time, next is already something that you're already busy. Typically, when I ask this question, a lot of people ask about what's the future and what's next, and they kind of dream very big and long-term things. And for you, it's already like, no, this month or next month, and these things. So I really like that you make it very actionable, very practical in answering these kind of questions, which is brings to me also a lot of diversity, because sometimes people, yeah, it's interesting that many people, when I bring this question, what do you want to, what's the question to ask, many people talk about what's the future, what's this and that, but it's a lot is about the future, but most of these answers are very big, and you're very practical, like, okay, the next couple of things. So I really like that small little difference in that, well, small and big at the same time, I would think. So thanks for
Iterative and
doing.
incremental. Yeah, I can probably talk to you about what I'm growing for the season, and hopefully I get hold of a little bit of land at some point to have an agroforestry. But don't let me divert. Don't let me divert.
Yeah, that's what it we all that and I think it's so important in agile. We always say, like, okay, we want to iterate and work on small things, and of course we have a grander vision, and of course we think about it, but it's also important to think, let's think about the longer vision, but what's the first step, and let's not divert in another kind of thing. No, this is that first thing, let's first do it, not doing too much at the same time, and then go for the next step and the next step, keeping that longer vision in mind, which is an exact example what you're giving here. So I really like that. So thanks for doing that. Okay, I want to move to that next question. Who do you think I should invite next? And I think, if I'm correct, you had at least one or two names that you want to talk about.
Yeah, two, if I'm allowed. So one is Colleen Kidland. She is a business agility, sort of in the leadership. She's
Mhm.
really immersed into complex adaptive systems. Also quite involved in what she calls
And this
constructive.
is Colleen, you mean, eh?
Yeah, that's the one.
And I've already invited her, and actually the interview went live as there was number 73 on Who's Agile. So it's already one that is visible. I'll send you the link after this so you can watch that. But yeah, I really liked it, and I knew that you were going to invite her, because in the beginning I was tempting to answer like, yeah, you're not the first to speak about this and to bring
Ah,
that, so that's why. But yeah, it's been as wonderful conversation as our conversation is having here. So if you so I interrupted you. What did you learn about Colleen, and why is it for you such an important person to for other people to watch that video now?
yeah, well, I'll have to watch it and tell you why the video is good. But I, I think I've been very lucky to cross paths with Colleen, and I really like her take of agile at exec level. I don't think there is many
Mm,
content or conversations happening on that. So that's a perspective I think people would benefit from, and also her drive to support underserved youth, which is super important because youth is our future political system, and she invests time, care, and effort on that, and I think we all should, in a sense. So yeah, I think it's a fantastic human being. We have much to learn from her.
yeah, and actually she brought on, for the people, if I hope I'm correct, but I think she was also the one playing some instruments
Yeah,
at the
yeah,
start of it, so that
yeah.
might be interesting for people as well. So that's nice. But you also had another person in mind that you wanted to talk about, to bring on.
Yeah, so that's Katarina Popok, and she is
And if I'm
physicist.
correct, that's her.
Yeah, that's the one.
So why should I bring her on the show?
So I think her intersection of being a physicist by education and then somehow landed into Scrum Mastering job and the agile coaching nowadays. She's super focused on green IT,
Hmm.
and again, sustainability is sort of part of her mission. And especially, we have to normalize these conversations. So for me, having the opportunity to say, bring these people that are already putting time, effort, care on the matter, and we have to normalize this conversation so that people feel comfortable, feel inspired, and feel the courage to start evolving their own practices to account for social and natural capital. And unless we make space for those voices to be heard, then it's only few sporadic people or stories. And instead, if we normalize it, it becomes more of a fabric layer of what we do. And it's about time, I guess. I already said it really is time for us to take Agile up a notch.
Exactly. I really like that whole process, and then it's not just Katrina, but there's actually a lot more, like you say. And I talked before with Jutta Eckstein, who's been on the show as well. Maris has been trying to find a way to find a moment for us to talk. So we haven't figured it out, but we definitely are planning to do. So there's actually will be more people on the show to talk about all of that, to take it up a notch. I really want to thank you for your time. It's been as wonderful as I had hoped. It's really going rather fast. If people want to reach out to you, what could be a good way to find you or to contact you?
Well, you can find my portfolio at inesgarcia.me.
And that should be the address, if I'm correct.
Yeah, that's the one. And yeah, just LinkedIn. I think I'm quite easy to find.
And that should be your URL on LinkedIn.
Ines Garcia Agile, of course.
Exactly. So yeah, so that's where people can find you. Yeah, like I said, it's been a wonderful time. And while I'm ending up, I see the sun behind my screen coming up even more. So I'm going to let you go and so see the sun and enjoy the rest of your day with Helen or with whatever your plans are for tonight. And I really wanted to thank you because it's been it's been a really fun thing to talk to you and gave me a lot of energy. So thank you for that.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you for taking the time and effort. This is in your own sort of space, non-working time. So it's great to have the resource you are creating and sending you a lot of energy. I know that you need to do some helping on software developing. So have a
Exactly.
great Friday.
I have some more help to do that. So thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you for watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.